right, good morning, friends. It is great to be with you. My name is Elise Fry. I am the Test Administration and Formative Assessment Specialist with the Utah State Board of Education, and I'm joined this morning by other members of our USBE assessment team, as well as personnel from our partners at Pearson, our vendor for the Utah Aspire Plus assessment. Know that they are going to be helping to monitor the chat as well as provide any support we need throughout the training. It is being recorded and it's going to be posted to our assessment YouTube channel so it can be referenced at any time in the future by you or colleagues if that's needed. I will also be working with Emily Ng, our support specialist, to post these slides for you in Midas so that you can also reference them as needed, that they'll be posted there as a PDF for you. So again, if at any time you have a question, you can drop it in the chat, but also know that with my trainings, when we kind of have those natural transition moments, I actually have some built-in spots for you to ask any questions that might be burning a hole into your brains that you'd like answers to. So just know that that is an option as well. So just so that you know, today's training will cover the purpose of the Utah Aspire Plus assessment, a super high-level overview of what's provided on the Resource Center, and the functionality of the ATOM system, in addition to guidance for remote proctoring, as well as how to access reporting. So this should provide you with what you need to get the process started, as well as support the teachers and other users in your LEA, but knowing that you can always reach out to Pearson or us at USBE for more guidance if you need it. So to begin, I just want to review the purpose of the Utah Aspire Plus assessment. It is an end of grade level assessment for 9th and 10th graders. All students are enrolled in all test components regardless of their course enrollment. It's a hybrid assessment made up of both ACT Aspire and Utah Test Bank items. There are 3 subtests which cover the content for reading, math, and science, and it provides a grade level proficiency score as well as a predictive ACT score. The state's window for testing this year is March 2nd through May 8th, with Pearson's help desk coverage being available to you starting at 6:30 a.m., closing at 7 p.m. during that window. But also know that the Pearson help desk is available even currently now through the hours of 6:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. here in our off season. It's also important to note here that this 2026 administration will be the last one for the Utah Aspire Plus assessment as it is currently known. So stay tuned for more updates during AD meetings and such for things that are coming in its replacement. Each LEA is responsible for determining school testing schedules. So the Utah Aspire Plus test can be administered as a battery with all of the components administered in one sitting, similar to ACT, or it can be administered on a subject by subject basis. Subject tests don't have to be administered in any specific order, but you do still need to follow the testing times. So for example, a school may choose to administer reading tests and then math, or vice versa. But what you can't do is divide the subject tests into multiple sessions. So once a subject test session begins, that test has to be completed within that sitting. Extra testing time is an allowable accommodation for students whose IEP or 504 or English Learner Plan specifies that accommodation. But know that extended time needs to be selected by the school or district test administrator in the student's user settings, which we will actually go over later. But if one of these testing time accommodations has been applied, the test itself is going to stop when that extended time runs out, just like it does for standard timing. So timing is also built in for students with accommodations for stop the clock breaks or securely extended sessions over multiple days who are using the default form of the Spanish adaptive form. Students with extended time or stop the clock accommodations should also be tested in an appropriate setting to minimize disruption, meaning that they need to be testing in the same location as students with similar or like accommodations, not necessarily with their standard test administration peers. I see a question in the chat. Are off cohort students registered based on their cohort or listed grade level, which only represents their credits, meaning they could end up taking the 9th grade test 2 years in a row or skipping the 10th? No, Del Rey, they are only rostered by their grade. They have to be enrolled in 9th grade or 10th grade to take the Utah Aspire Plus assessment. So a student who may be accelerated in math, if they're in like 7th or 8th grade, is not going to roster for Utah Aspire Plus if the RISE system does not currently support a test for their current course enrollment. When it comes to allowable materials, these are what's allowed during the administration of the Utah Aspire Plus assessment. Student testing tickets contain the information each student will need to use to log into the assessment itself. These tickets need to be handled in a secure manner and need to also be stored securely before use and then returned to either your school test administrator or however you choose to securely dispose those. Be aware of that. Depending on how you choose to administer the tests, separate student testing tickets could be needed for each subject and should be printed prior to the administration of the assessment. Text to speech is a built-in support that is available to every single student. So all students need to also have access to headphones so that they can access text to speech if they choose to. Students should be provided with blank scratch paper and a pencil prior to the start of the test session. The scratch paper does become part of secure testing materials, meaning that students cannot take their scratch paper with them. So proctors need to collect scratch paper at the end of every session, and after the testing window is closed, you need to ensure that scratch paper is destroyed along with those testing tickets. A Desmos graphing calculator and a TI graphing calculator are available on screen with TestNav, which is the secure browser that we use for Utah Aspire Plus. Students, however, can also provide their own. It just has to be a four-function scientific or graphing calculator. This includes like a TI-84 or a TI-84 Plus, the EL9600. But just know if these calculators have any programs or documents on them, they need to be removed. And also, all infrared ports have to be covered. No internet-capable devices are permitted. But if you have any calculator-specific questions, you can reach out to our secondary math specialist, Katie Bars, and she can answer those questions for you. The periodic table is also available within the system itself for the science test. Students will just need to select the exhibit button and become familiar with its functionality. But the best way to do that is by using the question samplers. The next thing we're going to cover is the Utah Aspire Plus Resource Center. So feel free to bookmark the URL site so it's super easy to access if you haven't already. We're going to start with what appears here on the homepage. You'll note that in the very center, there are two applications required for Utah Aspire Plus testing. ADAM is the assessment delivery and management system accessed by administrators and teachers for viewing reports. And TestNav is the secure browser used by students to access the Utah Aspire Plus assessment. School administrators, proctors, teachers, etc., they don't use TestNav, but they do need to be familiar with its appearance and its functionality so that they can assist students as needed. Some of this may sound familiar if you were able to attend the tech training that was held last week, but to use TestNav, you need to prepare the testing devices to ensure test security. You'll also need to turn off or disable any management software that would allow secure test content on your student's testing device to be viewed by another device. So think like LAN School or Hapara. You'll also need to close any software applications such as internet browsers, cameras, any screen capturing programs, email, instant messaging, media players, think iTunes or Amazon Music, things that students might be listening to music to while they're doing homework or using the device in a different nature. You'll also need to turn off automatic application launching. Common automatic launching software to disable like antivirus software, screensavers, that's a big one, the screensaver. Calendar notifications, software update notifications, those type of things also need to be disabled. TestNav has to be the only application running on your student's device during the test. Because if the student attempts to use another application or if the computer automatically launches something, TestNav is going to exit the student session. In fact, we were doing testing observations a couple of years ago, and there was a student who had these little babies, a little set of, of AirPods in their pocket, not that they were using to access the test, but they continued to flip the case, open and close, just like a little fidget in their hoodie pocket. And it kept trying to connect to the student's device, and it was kicking them out of TestNav. And no one could figure out why. Turns out it was trying to use the Bluetooth. So that's also going to be an issue. So just kind of be aware of those types of things. The second tab you can navigate to on the homepage is the Technology Setup tab. Information on this page will help you prepare your devices for online testing. There are two drop-down menus which will appear on this page. The first being the system requirements for both ADAM and TestNav. As a heads up, this information is generally more geared toward your LEA tech personnel, not so much for teachers unless they are wearing multiple hats in your LEA. The second tab is the user guides dropdown, and it provides links to various user guides and some extra guidance when using TestNav on a Chromebook or iPad, as well as common error codes that you might see while using TestNav. Below those drop-down menus, there's information regarding technology support office hours. Here, you'll be able to set up a date and time for some one-on-one help if you need it. It's important to draw attention to the highlighted announcement here, though, because if you're experiencing issues or have questions during a live testing session, just call the Pearson Help Desk immediately. Setting up office hours is going to just put you in a situation where it's too little too late. Emailing us at USBE, while acceptable, is also could put you in a situation where we can't assist you right away. So being able to contact the help desk immediately is actually your best line of defense if you're experiencing issues during a live testing session. The third tab on the homepage is the Administration Resources tab, where you can access any of the things that you need for the administration of Utah Aspire Plus. When you access those admin resources, you're going to see a series of drop-down menus here as well. So we're going to actually skip the reporting resources for now. We'll come back to them later, but know that that middle section is where you can find the guidance when we get to that point. And just, we're going to focus right now on the getting started in the administration guide sections. Under getting started is the orientation drop down, and that's going to provide you with the introductory information. Most importantly here, the schedule of events. If you haven't accessed it yet, you definitely want to, as it allows you to see sets of dates about when things are going to be available to you and when you can start performing tasks within the system itself. Preparation has the student tutorial and question samplers that will help prepare students with the testing environment and the test interface. We'll talk more about these in detail in a bit, as well as this menu links to another location on the homepage. Down under the administration guides, you'll see quick guides as well as the updated test administration manual that we lovingly refer to as the TAM. The TAM provides guidance for all pre, during, and post-test activities. It also has the scripting that's required for test administration located in it. The reporting resources in the middle that we skipped over at the beginning is where you'll find the test blueprints, the PLDs, which is short for performance level descriptions, score interpretation guides. There's actually two of those. There's one for educators as well as one for parents. You'll also notice there that there's cut score information, there's data layout information, and other reporting resources. As noted here, the 2026 data files layouts, those have been posted, so they're in ready if you ever need them beforehand. The training tab allows users to access a short training module that provides a quick step-by-step walkthrough on how to use Atom. And the last tab is the practice tests. It's going to take you to the question samplers and the TestNav tutorial. So just a few seconds ago, when I shared the preparing for testing dropdown linked on that homepage, this is actually what it takes you to. The question samplers are used to familiarize students, teachers, families, really truly any party interested in how academic content is assessed. They provide examples of question formats and item types that students can see while taking the Utah Aspire Plus test. These are separated out by grade banded content, so they aren't grade specific, but they are content specific. I want to draw attention to the fact that the question samplers are available for standard administration, Spanish, and the option for students to practice a version that is compatible with a screen reader for students with visual impairments. Paper forms for students requiring certain accommodations, as well as answer keys, are also available. Those accommodated ones have a standard form, a large print form, and a human reader companion form. The Braille question samplers, along with printing instructions for Braille, are also posted within the paper accommodations for printing dropdown. A link to the TestNav student tutorial appears below these question samplers. This allows students to practice with the TestNav system itself and is provided to help them become more familiar with the platform. It goes through how to use every single tool, the calculators, the highlighters, how to use strike through, the zoom tool, background color, line reader, text to speech, all sorts of question types, how to scroll, how to select, how drag and drop works. Students are going to get a very comprehensive review of what they will encounter. This tool is really great for practicing with the system without even worrying about content. I would highly encourage you to use this, especially with your ninth graders, because they haven't seen this system. They've used RISE for 5 years prior, but this is going to be new to them, so the layout is different. The contact support button will auto scroll you to the bottom of the homepage where you can find the Pearson Help Desk phone number. You can submit a help request. You can participate in a live chat as well as access any other online help guides for both Adam and TestNav. So with that, we are going to stop for our first set of questions. If you have questions regarding the Utah Aspire Plus Resource Center, that website, any tech setup or training tools, TestNav, this is a great time before we dive into your tasks that you're going to do before testing. Do you have any questions related to just this setup and prep side? Amy, can someone drop the link for the site into the chat? I don't want to get out of my presenter mode. It will make you dizzy to have to jump back and forth between websites and slideshows and all the things.
I will drop it in there. Give me 1 second.
Perfect. Thank you, Julie. Required tools. Anna, do you mean the allowable materials? You will have access to these slides after the training in Midas, and you can go ahead and review previous slides at any time. Christine, the window is, I want to say March 2nd through May 8th.
That's true.
Someone else can correct me though if that's not right.
That's correct.
Okay, perfect. Any other questions before we move on to all of your before testing tasks? If something comes to mind later, again, just drop it in the chat. We can address it. It's not a problem. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of Adam, this is just your high-level test prep checklist. For information regarding the standard test administration and testing ethics policy training, you can contact Scott Ross Kelly, our test administration and data coordinator. But just some things to be aware of and remember. Ensure that your system requirements are met and complete the infrastructure trial on student devices. You'll also want to confirm with your tech personnel that the computers that you will use for testing meet those system requirements for both the Adam system for test administrators and TestNav for students. Make sure that the latest version of TestNav is loaded onto your students' computers. Common problems that prevent successful test administration include interference by firewalls, content filters, antivirus software, things we've talked about. You'll also want to ensure that keyboards and headphones are working. Students can use text to speech to listen to the items being read aloud. So again, headphones need to be available for every student, not just students who will be using text to speech. Okay. Every student should have the opportunity if they choose to. You'll also want to eliminate distracting noises. We don't play music during standardized assessments. You'll also need to cover or remove materials that could provide answers or hints to students as they are taking their test. If possible, you'll also want to arrange your classrooms to prevent students from being able to view others' computer screens. You'll need to notify students of your local electronic device policy, but emphasize that there are no devices allowed during testing. If you're collecting devices, explain how devices are going to be collected. Just know that electronic devices they include, but again, are not limited to cell phones, smartphones, smartwatches, any truly internet capable device. The exception here are students who use devices to monitor health situations like insulin. Student testing tickets also need to be provided for students just to ensure that students have the correct login information for the test session and just prepare to dispose those in a secure manner when everyone's finished. Again, students may not take their scratch paper with them or bring their own to a testing session. The use of teacher-provided graphic organizers, even if specified on a student's IEP, is not allowed. Scratch paper needs to be blank and provided by the teacher. There's a calculator available on screen. Again, handheld is allowed. Just check the guidance in the calculator guide that's included on the Resource Center, or reach out to Katie if you have specific questions. Now we're going to look more depth in Atom. So to log in, you will be prompted to provide the email address associated with your account as well as your password. Once you've logged in, if you feel you need more access than what your account is currently giving you, you'll need to talk to your school admin or an LEA admin to give you the appropriate rights as needed. If you, as the LEA administrator, need your access updated, just reach out to me and I can work with Pearson to get that taken care of. There is a forgotten password feature if you ever need to use it, just on the login screen. If this is your first time logging into Atom, or if your browser cache has been cleared since the last time, a cookie banner is going to appear at the bottom of the Atom screen. Just be sure to select cookie settings and select allow all. Another enhancement you'll see is a new process on the page that loads and scans your machine using the OneTrust application and then sets its geolocation rules just to add the appropriate cookie banner. You can review the new privacy statement and set your cookie preferences from the new banner, but once set, that banner is no longer going to appear until your browser cache is cleared. Upon login, you will be directed to the home screen. Note the menu buttons on the left, as well as basic information regarding what you will find under menus, as well as testing times. Those are all included here in the main portion of the screen. We're going to skip over system and test management and just go right to rostering. This is where user accounts are created and student data is viewed or updated. So for example, adding accommodations or a participation code. When it comes to creating accounts for your LEA, I would recommend using the filters just to ensure duplicate accounts aren't being created. You can search for users by their first and or last name. In the field, you can just search by school, role, status, any accommodations applied on a student's account, rostered and unrostered students, all those types of things. So our students with dual enrollment and the sourced ID, which is the SSID, just know that those are also great ones to use. There's a lot of possibilities here when using the filters to search for accounts. The first option in the rostering dropdown is orgs. This is where you can search for schools associated with your LEA. The parent dropdown is your specific LEA or district, and the type dropdown provides you with the type of school, which you actually probably won't even need. Any information you set with your filters is going to populate in the main portion of your screen. If you click on the paper icon, it's going to bring up the org configuration information screen. This is actually a read-only screen. It's just informational. The last option under rostering is users. You can use those very same filters to narrow your search if you need to at any time. Any information you set with filters is going to populate in that main section of your screen, though. There are some different user roles available in Atom. There are 3 different types of users you have some control over. The district administrator role is assigned to the LEA assessment director, and only the LEA assessment director. So this is why it's actually really important to ensure that USBE has the appropriate names and contact information, because this account is automatically created with what is provided to us. This user is responsible then for creating other district level accounts associated with their LEA, and can also create school administrator accounts and can view all data for schools associated with their LEA. So this brings us to the second type of user, which is the district level user. This user has all the very same viewing permissions as the district administrator, but they can only create accounts for school administrators, no other district level users. Many of our assessment directors have assistants who require district level access within the Atom system, but don't hold the title of assessment director. So these are the users who would be your district level users. Then there's the school administrator role. School administrators can add other administrators for their school, like school counselors or maybe a learning coach, but they can only access data associated with the school or schools that have been assigned by the district administrator or a district level user role user. Okay. The teacher and the student roles are loaded through UTREX. This means teachers and students cannot be manually added to the Atom system. Okay. When it comes to actually administering the test, faculty members, school administrative or clerical employees, extracurricular teachers, your student teachers, or even paraprofessionals, all of them can act as proctors without actually having an Atom account. It's not required. I'm going to say that part again because it's super important and there's a lot of confusion that surrounds it. Anyone proctoring Utah Aspire Plus does not log into Atom. Okay. Logging into the Atom system is only required for test session verification, which can be done by your LEA or school administrators, printing testing tickets, and accessing reporting. Okay. Retired faculty members and substitute teachers, they can also serve as proctors if they've received proper training in administration for the Utah Aspire Plus and completed the required testing ethics training. Parent volunteers, other high school students, they cannot act as testing staff. Okay. If you're not sure who does what when it comes to these user roles, there is guidance outlined in the TAM, or you can also reach out to Scott Ross Kelly if you have questions regarding who and who cannot proctor. So to create new users within your organization, you will use the little plus create new blue button that appears in the upper right corner of your screen next to that three-dot kebab menu. This would be for district level users and school administrators. Remember, you cannot create teacher or student accounts because those are synced automatically through Utrex. But if you don't see a teacher or student that you expect to see, you can absolutely reach out to our assessment data specialist, Maureen Rushing, for assistance, and she can assist you with either getting them added or figuring out why they are not currently appearing. When you create new accounts for your district level users or your school admins, you'll see in the user setup information the identifier box. For administrators and district users, this is going to be their school email account. This also goes for sourced ID, username, and user email. The org scopes are any school you wish for the user to be associated with. As assessment directors, you hold the title as district administrator in Atom, and it is then your responsibility to add other district level users. From there, either of those types of account holders can create a school administrator account. Okay. Once you've added all of the required information, you'll need to ensure that the two boxes below are checked so that the user's account is both enabled and that their welcome email is sent. As a note here, the information in that email does expire after a week. So if expiration timeline happens, the email will need to be sent again. The Pearson generated email regarding the newly created account is going to be sent from a no reply account. So depending on your LEA's filters and email settings, it may also go directly to a spam or a junk folder. So make sure that users are checking that as well after you have created accounts. When you're finished, make sure you click the blue Save button at the top right corner of the screen, and then you can select the Back button at the top of the left corner of the screen. Again, you do not need to add teachers or student accounts. Those are going to come through Utrex. And note that with teachers, there is still a chance that their sourced ID or user email information is not their school account, but for many teachers, it now will be. Just know that it's what is being sent through Cactus, okay? But know that the email itself is only used as a username. Reporting information isn't being sent there or anything like that. You also cannot change a teacher's email within the Atom account, okay? Because it's just going to reset back when Utrex loads again the next day. If you have users who need another welcome email sent, for example, if that expiration timeline went or if it just didn't get sent there, or even if you just neglect to select the send welcome emails checkbox, you can select the users who need it again with the checkbox and or just search using the email filters and then use that kebab menu, those three little vertical dots. Note that this menu also includes the set password and reset emails. So you can accomplish that task using the same functionality. Just search for the selected users who request it and then select the send password or reset email options. If you need to complete a specific task for a specific student or a group of students, you can search by using the filter options under the users menu. In this example, I've chosen to filter by org, so my LEA, and you can see that two different schools are represented in the list of populated students, okay? By the student role or by the Spanish language accommodation, okay? We're gonna learn how to set that shortly. I could have also added a filter for grade if needed, because as you can see right now, the populated information has students with a grade range of 7 through 9. You can use the actions icon to complete various tasks. We'll start with the first one, which is the little tiny paper pencil combo. This is the edit icon, but note that the second icon is a garbage can. That's the delete icon. I just recommend steering clear of that option, but just know that if you select it accidentally, this box is going to appear. The beauty of this box is if you don't pay attention to its contents and just select delete inadvertently, that box actually changes to this box and it won't allow you to delete the record without typing the name as it appears in red. This goes for all user accounts. So, accidentally removing an account isn't really even a thing unless you're also typing the name accidentally and reselecting the delete button accidentally, which at this point, let's be honest, is no longer an accident and definitely intentional. Okay. So when it comes to this delete functionality, district administrators have access to delete district administrators, though I wouldn't recommend deleting yourself. School administrators and teacher accounts. Just know that you cannot delete student accounts. With those teacher accounts, though, just know if you delete one, odds are it's going to return the next day with the Utrecht sync anyway. Okay. School administrators can delete other school administrators associated with their org as well as teachers. But again, teachers do not have this delete functionality. Just know that a teacher is not going to be able to get in here and delete somebody purposefully or inadvertently. But as a school administrator or as a district user, using that delete feature is going to be necessary when you go into cleanup accounts. For example, if you had school administrators who have left schools within the last few months or since they logged into Adam, you can go in and delete those accounts so that they are no longer associated. All right, so back to this little edit pencil. From here, you have the option to edit a myriad of student user information as well as navigate to other options within the student user option. Just be careful not to edit any information you didn't intend to edit, but know that if you make a mistake along the way, just cancel those changes rather than saving them before you move forward. The preferred names option allows you to add user preferred first, middle, and last names as needed. Just be sure to save any changes before you navigate back to the users. If you update this information, also know this is what will show on the student's testing ticket. The demographics option allows you to view students' date of birth, as well as other possible education classifications by the student's IEP, 504, or even their EL plan. If a student starts a session with the wrong test form selected, the student will have to start over on the correct form. So it's actually really critical to double check the accuracy of this form section prior to the student starting it. And all of these things would be listed here. Now we're going to look at setting accommodations. This is super important. At the top, you have the option to view the accommodations that have already been set or edit those accommodations as they currently appear. To set a student's accommodations manually, you go through a series of provided accommodations and select the options required by the student's IEP. There are a series of checkboxes and drop-down menus which outline the options that are provided within the Adam system. These accommodations can be set at the subject level and be very specific depending on the student's IEP, or you can also use the apply to all option. The accommodations show in 3 separate sections. This top section, as denoted by the drop-down, is form-based, meaning any of these accommodations are going to actually change the type of form of test that the student is issued. So you can see with this specific student, the Spanish adaptive version of both the reading and science assessments have been selected. Note that with the Spanish adaptive form, there is very specific guidance for which students the Spanish adaptive form is recommended. You'll want to reference the TAM for that guidance. When you set this for a student, please know it translates nearly the entirety of the test and its contents. So think item types, instructions. Okay. If you're interested in what this looks like, I would encourage you to access the Spanish form of the question sampler so you can see how it appears for students if it was applied. I would also encourage you to show your students who may be requesting this through their EL plans. Make sure the student and the parents see what this looks like before they have it set. Okay. It will save you a lot of headache of invalidating the test and then resetting it if that was applied inadvertently or without the student's knowledge. The second set of accommodations that are provided for the student once they are set, um, these are noted as the test delivery accommodations. And you can see here with the double time, I selected it in the apply to all column. But to actually apply it to all, I then have to hit that little arrow button that's next to it, which then automatically populated all three content area assessments. But with the add time accommodation, like time and a half, double time, and triple time, those can all be set. And a student might be assigned time and a half for one subject, but not for another. Okay. So with the apply to all column, it's imperative to note that just selecting this from the drop down doesn't actually apply it to the content areas. You have to hit that little arrow. If you don't, you'll actually end up contacting Jessica and requesting a test reset because the student will have started and the apply all didn't actually take effect. So this is one of those little system nuances that we've had issues with in the past. And even though we try to call it out specifically, it's something that is very easily overlooked by the field when they go to enter these accommodations. So make sure that as you're providing training, you hit this piece very specifically. That little extra arrow, super important if you're actually going to use the apply all feature. These accommodations can also be content specific, as you can see here by selecting the extra large black mouse pointer here for science and math only. You'll note that the add time component is also here. Students that require extended time or the other language accommodation, whether scripting is provided in Spanish, they need to actually test in a separate location from students that don't require those same accommodations. Again, these accommodations are imperative to have set before test administration. For students who need Zoom, it's important to also select the zoom of the mouse pointer. Otherwise, students will likely not be able to see the mouse pointer because the setting for the zoom doesn't enlarge the mouse pointer. It's only going to enlarge the text. So it's also important to check with a school professional who knows the required magnification levels so that they can set this appropriately. Okay. Also, the pixel size for the mouse pointer option is described in the TAM if you want some extra guidance there. The last and the largest accommodation section is labeled the local accommodation section. Here you can add a myriad of accommodations. Students needing any of these and the other accommodations, again, have to have them applied before the session starts. Accommodations and EL supports, again, enter those and add them before even preparing your sessions so that you can make sure that if you are going to create your own proctor groups, that you are able to set students with like accommodations in those proctor groups. If you discover, though, that a student wasn't provided an accommodation after the administration had started, you'll want to follow the guidance that's provided in the TAM. It's actually there's a specific section and it's titled Wrong Test Form / Accommodation. But if the accommodation is one that makes the test form-based, again, like the Spanish adaptive form or anything with extended time, that test is going to need to be invalidated and a new form is going to need to be issued to your student. However, if it is not form-based, like the enlarged mouse pointer or zoom percentage, you can actually just have the student log out of the test, set the accommodation, and then reseat them in the test session, similar to what we do with RISE, because then the accommodation will just automatically be applied. After you apply any accommodations, click Save. This screen is going to appear indicating the accommodations were applied, and it's going to show you to which subjects it was applied to. Contact Jessica Wilhelm, though, to submit any accommodation requests for a student requiring a human scribe. This is marked with a little gold-colored student icon. I've also included a link to the USBE Accessibility and Accommodations and Assessment site, because on that link, you can find the accommodations policy, the accommodations request forms, and any other important information regarding accommodations. There's also continued guidance in the TAM regarding state-approved accommodations. But if you have any questions regarding accommodations or anything you encounter on the USBE accommodations tab, feel free to reach out to Jessica Wilhelm, our special education specialist who works with Utah Aspire Plus, and she'll be able to assist you. Just know that she was not able to join us on a call today because she is attending a conference. So if you have specific questions for accommodations, you'll actually probably want to save those. Scott and I can attempt to answer them, But if it's super specific, here's her email address, and you can reach out to her with those more specific questions following the training. When it comes to applying accommodations, you can also use a file export import method. You'll need to access the user section of the rostering menu and then use the search on the left-hand side. Just ensure the org is correct and set the role to student. You'll select the students that you need to add accommodations for by using the checkboxes next to their names, or you can do the select all from the top square. Using the three-dot kebab menu, select student accommodation upload, and then you just follow the instructions to download the template. This shows you the top and bottom of the student accommodations upload screen. You'll find the blue button, the click to create template button, and then go to template history to download the template that you created. You'll open that file and place a 1 in the cell to enable the accommodation. As a note here, if you need to add an accommodation and have it applied to all subjects, ensure that you're putting a 1 in each of the columns, not just the apply all column. So if you look at student Brianna, the apply all for double time has a 1, and so do each of the subjects. This is going to ensure that if I were to check Brianna's accommodations, all 3 of those subjects would then show double time. However, if you skip down to Christopher, you'll notice that the 1 was only added to the apply all field, no other subjects. This isn't going to apply the accommodations that you expect for Christopher, okay? It's also important to note here, don't change the apply to all row in the spreadsheet. We know that when we are doing spreadsheet uploads, if you go to edit columns, it's going to mess things up when you go to upload them. So just be careful when you are putting your edits here. You'll need to save the changes as a CSV file and then upload that modified file. Again, if you have any questions regarding accommodations, you can reach out to Jessica and she can provide any support for you. So can the Pearson Help Desk when it comes to the specific spreadsheet uploads as well. Moving on from the accommodations tab, we are going to look at the administrations tab. This is where you can find which administrations the student is currently registered for. So here you can see that our student, Isaac Strickland, is assigned to all tests applicable to a 9th grade student. You can also see progress is showing as not started for the question samplers and submitted for the actual tests, because these progress fields will update as students complete the test components. Our big takeaway from this, though, is that the student was administered all summative tests and no question samplers. Okay, we absolutely do not encourage this practice because the student should have had exposure to the testing system in that low stakes environment prior to taking the actual summative assessment. Adam tracks this usage for us, so please ensure that question samplers are being used before students take their summative tests. On the off chance that you reach out to me and I see that they haven't taken one and the question was on a summative, this kind of becomes a testing ethics violation, okay? Because the student wasn't able to practice within the system before you administered them a summative test, okay? Also know, this was actually new last year, but if you would like your students to have multiple opportunities to complete a question sampler for one subject area, you can actually reach out to Pearson now and have that first attempt reset so that it can be taken again. Okay, these question samplers can be taken pretty much any time starting now throughout the administration of the testing window. Okay. Student rosters list all students associated with your organization, and you can use student rosters to confirm all of your students have been loaded into the Atom system. You'll want to verify student rosters prior to administration just to assist teachers and proctors with verifying test eligibility of those students, just in case they are proctoring students they are unfamiliar with. From the home page, you just go to the rostering menu, select users, then using the filters, you'll need to apply the organization like your LEA or your school, as well as the student role, and you can narrow your search even further if needed by applying other filters, again, like the grade or accommodations applied. All right, we're going to navigate back to our main drop-down menus over on the left. We're going to skip over reporting for now and move to orders. Paper test materials must be ordered during the accommodation material order window. So any user should be able to order these If you have students who are taking paper tests, there is guidance around administering them in the TAM. Preparation for paper testing has a window for ordering materials outlined in the TAM, and students who require paper testing, like enlarged print or braille, those orders need to be placed through an additional order request in Adam at least 2 weeks prior to the student's test date, just to ensure the delivery of the materials. It's imperative that LEAs review the order just to ensure it's accurate prior to the student starting the session as well. So for students who require Braille, please verify the correct Braille code is ordered by checking with your IEP team. And also please note that when students take a paper test in standard print or large print, students are going to lose access to the embedded supports available to all students within the online system. So students need to be provided with comparable supports, including providing oral administration to replace text to speech, which is available for all students in online testing. So students will need access to an allowable calculator since they won't be able to access the embedded calculator, things like that. A human reader companion book is also going to be sent with printed tests so that the scripting also becomes available to the proctor. Christine, yes, you'll get to see how to assign question samplers. Know that it's the very same when assigning the summative, and we'll go over that here in a little bit. From the Manage Orders page, you're going to select the plus Create Order button in the upper right corner, complete the required fields, and then click on the Go to Order Item button to select the necessary items. You'll complete the required fields and ensure that the shipping contact and shipping address information is correct. If they're not, you can edit those with the little edit button, and then just go to the Go to Order Item buttons to select the necessary items that you might need. You'll enter the quantities needed and then select the Go to Confirm Your Order button. And you'll just want to review the information on the order screen before confirming. And you can actually go back to the order items and make any necessary changes if needed. With that, do you have questions on the setup, viewing rosters, but again, with accommodations and paper testing? Feel free to ask them. Scott and I might be able to help you out, but if not, Jessica's email is here on the screen so that you can make your own little personal note to send her an email. Any questions regarding these specific things? Know that when we move past this, we are going to go into how to assign test management, whether that be through the live administrations as well as the training administrations. So that's where we're moving next. Let's see. I know Jessica had mentioned students with speech to text might not need this for RISE because they aren't taking a writing test. How much do kids have to write with Aspire Plus? Not at all. There's no writing, Ashley. You're welcome. Any other questions before we move into test management? Okay. So the test management menu is where you are going to find both the training administrations for the question sampler version for practice, as well as the one for live administrations. It is important to note that the non-secure question samplers that are available through the Resource Center are different than these ones, in that this one is a secure version that you can administer through Adam as practice. The public ones that are on the Utah Aspire Plus Resource Center, students can click on those at any time and like test nav isn't needed. It's just going to click on it and they're going to be able to go through those. Okay. Know that the question samplers are the same in both locations, but the secure option allows schools to practice setting up proctor groups, printing student testing tickets, anything like that. So from the Adam home screen, you'll navigate to the test management menu and select training administrations if you are doing question samplers. Okay. So in response to Christine's question in the chat, that is where I would administer a secure question sampler, is the training administration. Okay. The other one, the actual one that says administrations, those are your live Utah Aspire Plus tests. You do not want to click there unless it is summative test time. Um, Scott can even confirm. Last year we had a couple of sessions where a teacher absolutely clicked on administration when they thought it was a training administration, which required a lot of invalidations and all sorts of things. And sometimes we can't even invalidate it because it was during the testing window. So make sure that you click on the appropriate one. This was the difference, if you remember, years and years ago between the brown site and the blue site, so that there was hopefully not training administrations administered at summative time. This one is a little bit more difficult in that they're located in the same place. Just make sure that you are clicking training for training. The other thing to be aware of with the training administrations appear in a pink bar with a little purple training label. Okay. Live summative administrations are in a gray banner. They don't have a training label. Okay, that's another thing to point out to your teachers and proctors. From here, again, you can either administer your question sampler or you can practice creating proctor groups. Just know that the pre-creation of proctor groups is not required to administer tests. So you need to determine which one of these is going to work best for your LEA, but I will show you both ways. So if you're choosing to move forward without creating proctor groups, you can print your testing tickets, which we're going to review in a bit, and your proctor card, more similar to our process with RISE grades 3 through 8, where preset proctor groups aren't necessary. Note that my sessions show over 52,000 students here. This number doesn't just naturally appear for you anymore. To get that screen to show the number of students, you actually need to click on the click to load bar and that number of students will appear. Okay. To print your proctor cards for pre-created proctor groups, you're going to select the print cards option under the proctor group kebab menu. To print the proctor card, if you haven't pre-created proctor groups, you're going to use print cards PG create only. That option under the proctor groups kebab menu. These proctor group cards are for your proctors. It's almost like a testing ticket for the teacher. Okay. You can select the option to print just one card or multiple from the layout option at the top of the printing screen, and then just select the green print button to advance to your device's regular printing functionality. If you are choosing to create proctor groups, it's advised to do so, obviously, prior to your day of testing. However, students can be added to proctor groups the day of testing as well if it is needed. They just need the test code that's on the proctor group management screen because it's not going to readily appear on their already printed testing ticket. Okay. But as long as the student is given the correct test code, they're going to be added to the proctor group where their test code assigns them. So to work with proctor groups, you'll begin by viewing the proctor groups. You'll see a list of proctor groups that may have already been created, as well as a group with all of the students still currently assigned. To create a new proctor group, you just select the Add Create Proctor Group button and enter the desired information for the proctor group. So this could be like the teacher name, the room number, the content area, whatever makes it easy for you. For proctor groups participating in the remote testing option this year, you'll also need to ensure that you've selected the remote proctoring checkbox to indicate that group is testing in a remote setting. This is a critical step in allowing the proctor and students who are eligible for remote testing to communicate during the test. If this box isn't checked, the audio-visual communication features used between the students and their proctor is not going to be enabled. So please also do not click this box if your students are testing with you in person at your school. It is going to eat up your internet bandwidth so fast, and you're going to absolutely 1,000% run into connectivity issues. And I know this because we saw it happen with a couple of schools last year. So only click that remote proctor box if your students are testing remotely away from your location. Okay, brick and mortar in-person administration, you ignore this box. To add students to a proctor group, you select the plus button and then you just begin adding students. You can either add students by searching for their name in the highlighted box, or you can add students by filtering specific information, such as accommodations that have been applied. You can also add students in groups of 10. So just the 10 students currently showing. I mean, you can click that and to add 10 students, you can click it multiple times. Or you can manually select them with the plus button under the actions column. When you are satisfied with your selection, you just choose the close button at the bottom of your screen. You can verify this proctor group before submitting as well. Just use the red garbage can to remove a student and then the blue plus button to add any additional students as needed. After submitting, you'll automatically be redirected to your proctor's group list. You can review the students in this proctor group at any time just by selecting the students button. The test code for this proctor group is now going to appear at the top. I can edit this proctor group still if I need to. I can also change both the name of the proctor group itself as well as the students who are included. So if you need to move a student to one of these existing proctor groups, you can just select the edit proctor group option and make those changes. Making the changes does not change the test code. Okay, so you don't have to reprint things out. When it comes to these proctor groups, a couple of things to keep in mind though. Students who take a test in the same room are considered a test group and need to be receiving the same subject test, the same set of scripted instructions, and the same breaks. Adam only allows you to create proctor groups with this in mind. Students with different accommodations or different test forms should not be testing in the same rooms as your general standard testing students. If you ever need to delete a proctor group, you will have to remove all students from that proctor group. And once you've done that, the empty proctor group can also disappear from view. Okay. To delete a proctor group, you will have to, again, remove all students from that proctor group. And once you've done that, you can select the delete button. If you don't want to delete an empty proctor group, though, you can also select the hide empty checkbox that's at the top of the list, which is what we did last year because deleting wasn't actually an option for us. And since we're here, if and when you need to apply a participation code for a student, one way that you can do this is by using the Actions kebab menu next to the student that you want to apply the code to. You'll find this in the Actions column of the Proctor Group screen. If you didn't create groups beforehand, they just appear in the unassigned group of students. But a drop down is going to appear and you can make the desired selection. So for this student, you can see I've selected the code 204, parental exclusion. But for what it's worth, applying this code prior to the administration is still going to generate a testing ticket for the student. But know that TestNav is going to block the student's entry to the assessment. So while you can create a separate proctor group for students who have the parental exclusion applied prior to testing, you don't necessarily have to anymore, but you absolutely can if it makes it easier to remove those students so you don't inadvertently print a testing ticket. But know that if you inadvertently did print one and they somehow had it and were sitting at a computer, TestNav is not going to allow them to log in. When you save those participation code changes, it will appear on the proctor group. I'll be showing you another way to add participation codes when we get to the post-test activities section of the training, but I just wanted to highlight this functionality since it's visible here right now. Back to proctor groups, you can also create your proctor groups using a bulk upload method. So to do so, you'll still access the groups from the same view option under the proctor groups kebab menu. You'll then select the upload group button. You'll follow the directions included on the screen by selecting all students or all unassigned students or no students, and then you'll download the template. You'll open the CSV file that downloads by clicking the template history, and on that file, just make sure you populate the new proctor group name for the proctor group you want to add the students to, or enter a new proctor group name to create that proctor group. Then you can delete any remaining students you don't want to add to this proctor group by selecting the data and pressing the delete or backspace key to ensure that all data has been removed. And then you'll need to save that in the same CSV format. You'll then follow the directions included on your screen by selecting all students or all assigned, download, open it up, click the template history on that file. Make sure you populate the testing or the ID, the enrollment org identifier. You can then edit the proctor group that you want to add. Again, delete any remaining students that you don't want to and save it in the format. You'll then need to upload that new CSV file to Adam. You can always edit the students within the proctor group as well. There's guidance in the TAM. Okay, so if you need to go make changes after you've done your upload, you can do that. Um, Testing tickets will need to be downloaded from Atom and prepared prior to testing day. So the testing ticket shows the SSID, the test code that each student is going to use, and these are, again, considered secure testing materials and should be handled as such. So students should not have access to them prior to testing. Don't hand it to them the day before and say, make sure you bring this tomorrow. Okay. They need to be passed out during the session, at the beginning of the session. They should also then be collected and destroyed appropriately after that session has completed. If your proctor groups are set up prior to administration, you can separate those testing tickets for each subject area as well. If your proctor is just opening their proctor group on the day of testing, there actually wouldn't need to be a need for multiple tickets because the student's last name and SSID are going to appear already, and the proctor can provide the code separately prior to administration, similar to what we do with RISE. We're going to review this process again in a bit. So if you're choosing that group, that route where you don't pre-create proctor groups, just know multiple testing tickets are not going to be needed, especially if you're using the battery administration where they're in with one proctor all day. If they are moving to a separate place with another proctor, then that second testing ticket would be a good thing to do. To print your test tickets, you will need to access them through the test management menu and then select the administration option for summative tests or the training administration for your question samplers. Okay. On the administration screen, you're going to see administration cards. From there, select the print cards option, and the print screen provides you with lots of different options. So we're going to explore those now in detail. With layout, there's a 2x4 option, a 3x6 option, as well as a one per page option, which is actually what we've recommended in the past if you're planning to use your testing ticket as scratch paper. Another method that schools have used specifically for the battery administration is printing all content subjects on one color to avoid misadministration confusion. So like reading on pink, math on blue, science on yellow. This just ensures that you're handing out the intended testing ticket, but note that the testing ticket shows the student's name, the test they're taking, their test code, as well as their SSID as the identifier. The same test and proctor session name will also appear in the lower right of the testing ticket. With the 2x4 and 3x6 options, you have the choice to toggle the dashed cutting line borders on or off by using the button I've highlighted here in yellow. If you are printing the testing tickets for multiple proctor groups at one time, it would be beneficial to select this fourth button option to include a title page for each proctor group, which serves as a separator to the stacks of testing tickets. This is also a really great way to confirm your students who have applied accommodations, as it will show that next to their SSID. You can actually see in this example that additional time has been applied to Isabel's assessment. As a note with this example, this would be a big old red flag for me as a test administrator because it shows that I have students with different accommodations rostered to the same session. We would discourage that. That is not allowable. They need to have the same accommodations to be in the same session. Okay. You'll also want to pay attention to this grouping option when printing, as sequential and stacked are two very different layouts. The sequential option will group all your students within a proctor group on the same page or a set of pages. So you can see in the example that proctor groups A, B, C, D, and E all have 8 students, which is going to print on one sheet. Proctor group F has 6 students, and so on. The stacked method will print in such a way that students who are in the same proctor group appear in a specific area on the page. So note that there's a student from proctor group A in the top left position for each of the pages. So this is going to naturally separate your proctor groups into stacks after you cut them apart physically. Okay. The Choose Proctor Groups button will allow you to select all of the proctor groups associated with your organization, or you can select specific ones by toggling the checkboxes. Once you've selected your desired testing tickets to print, you're going to push the green print button, which is going to bring up your device's expected printing functionality. I put 2 examples on this slide for you to see, though, so that you can see the testing ticket print details will change when I apply various changes. So the first set of testing tickets had 5 proctor groups with 13 pages of tickets, where the second instance shows 4 proctor groups printing 92 pages of testing tickets. Now we're going to look at the guidance for testing students when there aren't the pre-created proctor groups. Okay, so if you're not going to make them, this is what you're going to do. And a number of users went this route last year, our first year with the Atom system. And oh, that was 2 years ago. And even more actually joined that club last year. But if you haven't done it yet, all other users have been pleasantly surprised with how easy it is. This is far more similar to how we test students in grades 3 through 8. As a note here, though, if you are participating in remote testing, this is not an option for you. Remote testing needs to pre-create proctor groups. Okay. For those of you doing all of your testing in person, you have this option to go pre-created or not. So as long as you don't start moving students and assigning teachers, all you have to do is log into Atom, navigate to the test management menu on the left, select which administration you're doing. So whether you're doing the summative one or a training administration, and then you click the print card button. That's it. That's all you do. That's the end. People proctoring the test, they don't log into Atom. Okay. If I were wearing my classroom teacher hat, I'd actually probably say something to you like, now repeat it back to me so I know you understand. People proctoring tests do not log into Atom. They just need the appropriate test code and proctor password. So there's been some confusion in the past because once these proctor cards were printed, it was noticed by users that they're all the same. And this is expected behavior. So if you're testing without pre-created proctor groups, all of your proctors are going to start with this same test code and proctor password. Okay. Another individual identifier is going to be provided to them later in the process. So I see a question from Whisper in the chat. If we're doing students virtual and others in person, can we only create the virtual tester proctor groups? So Whisper, if you have some that are doing remote testing absolutely 1000% has to have pre-created. If you are doing some in person, you can choose either one. Okay. So again here, no one logs in, whether you're using the proctor groups or not. But if I'm going to proctor the test, as a proctor, I'm going to navigate to the Atom site. So I'm going to go to the URL, but instead of logging in, I'm going to click the Proctor a Test button on the right. Okay. If you pre-created your proctor groups, each teacher is going to be entering different information here. If you didn't pre-create those, all of the teachers are going to enter the very same test code and the very same proctor password that were on the card you provided to them. Okay. Each proctor is then going to be prompted to create their session. This process, it takes less than 2 minutes. So don't be deterred by the fact that your teachers have to create it. Okay. Truly takes less than 2 minutes. They will need a proctor group name. A little guidance for them here is helpful though. So you can see I've put information to note Mrs. Fry's third grade period math class here. But if you're choosing to organize students maybe alphabetically with like a battery style administration, that might say something more like Fry A through C group 1. Okay. They'll pick their district, their school, type their name, and then they're going to put their school email account in. Once the proctor hits the confirm button at the bottom, it's going to automatically take them to the proctor dashboard, and they'll also receive an email with that information. A test code is going to appear in the upper right of the proctor dashboard screen, and that code is then shared with the students in their individual classrooms. Okay, students are going to be asked to type in their first name, their SSID, and then this test code. If you still feel more comfortable with having the students already appearing in those pre-created sections, you are welcome to continue that practice, but no, it is not necessary, and it is going to save you a lot of time on the back end, okay? The students just remain in an unassigned session, kind of like a cattle call session, until that student puts the test code in, which then starts to sort them into those proctor groups in real time, okay? LEA and school administrators can then log into Atom and view proctor groups as they are being created. You just log in and select the view button. You'll notice here that all the proctor groups pre-created are slightly different, but it's still very easy to tell who created them. But you'll see that the generic view unassigned button, that up at the very top, that's where all the students who haven't logged into a test yet are sitting held until they log in. That's also where they're going to stay until they do. So it's also really easy to see which students are absent or who haven't started testing. So makeup testing is a lot easier with this as well because you didn't have to have a teacher tell you who didn't show up and then go and remove them from the previously assigned proctor group and add them to a new one in hopes they show up for a second time or a third time. Okay. You just have to wait till they show up to school, put them in a room with a proctor, and the proctor can create a group and provide that test code in real time. It saves you a lot of time, truly, in the long run. The system just automatically moves the student from that unassigned group to the proctor group where the appropriate test code was provided. Okay. This can also be done with training administration question samplers. Okay. So you can do this for actual summative test administration or training. Do we have any questions so far on creating proctor groups, adding or deleting students between proctor groups, or the first way to apply participation codes? As a note with participation codes, though, there is a second way that I'm going to show you again when we get to the post-test activities or generating testing tickets. Any questions for those? As a heads up, we are going to be moving into the during testing section of the training. So if you had any prep questions, the before stuff, this is a great time. Yes, Cassidy did put a good thing to point out here. Um, the additional work does definitely come in when you have to sort all the student cards into groups if you don't create the proctor groups, because you've got to give the correct proctors the correct testing tickets. Okay. Christine, if something comes up, let me know. Do you have to click on the click to load session to generate the testing tickets with numbers? Jessica, you have to click on that load session if you want the numbers to appear on that first card. It just doesn't appear there. It doesn't mean they don't exist. It just it it hides them currently. That's actually a great idea, Cassidy. She put in the chat that their schools have been using a mail merge from the SIS rosters and printing their own formatted testing tickets just to eliminate it, which you absolutely can do. Because if you think about it, if you're not going to pre-create your proctor groups, all the student actually needs is their SSID and the correct spelling of their name. Some of them might even already know that, in all honesty. So, if there's a better way for you to provide that information to students, you do not have to use the Atom created testing tickets. Is there another way to show a list of accommodations for teachers, a report? Christine, you can sort those by in the rostering user section by filtering by student and then filtering by each individual accommodation. So you can do it that way. Any other questions? Yes, Ashley, you are just fine to start creating your proctor groups if you are going to go that route. Okay, our chat is slowed down, so I'm going to go ahead and go on to our next slide. Here is your during testing checklist. So most important to note here, tests are proctored both through the system as well as walking around the classroom with your students. Okay, two proctors should be used. One can be your roaming proctor who might be monitoring open sessions using the test administration system if you're testing in person. That person can be in a separate place if you are testing in person. However, if you are testing remotely, your two proctors must be in the same location. Okay. Your proctors also should be circulating the classroom actively. We absolutely recognize that monitoring from a testing computer screen, from a device screen, is going to happen, but it shouldn't be the entirety of the session. It's making sure students get logged in. Okay. Those types of things. So we're going to move through the actual testing process now. So proctors are going to enter their test code and their proctor password, whether it be the generic one provided to everyone if you are not creating your proctor groups, or the very individualized one if you did pre-create. And then they're going to confirm their proctor group. The proctor is going to enter any prompted appropriate information and save it, and this is then going to redirect them to their proctor dashboard. As students complete the login process, their information is going to begin to populate in that proctor dashboard. On the proctor dashboard, you can approve students one at a time by selecting the Actions Kebab button to the right of the student, and then by selecting Approve Session, or you can approve all of your students who are currently waiting by clicking the Approve All button. In the session management area of the Proctor dashboard, you are going to be able to view and filter and search for students within your Proctor group and manage their sessions. So students who are in your session will show their SSID as the identifier, their first and last name, their school is going to show under the org column, and you will also see each individual start time, okay? Followed by the student progress column, and the test status of each of the students' assessments. So the test status helps the proctor to know if and how the student is interacting with the assessment. Test status can appear as not started, which just means the student has not logged into the assessment. These are most likely going to be your absent students or the occasional student refuses to test moments. Okay. In progress means that the student has logged into the assessment and they are consistently interacting with the items. Exited is where the student has exited the TestNav app. And so this means the proctor might actually need to reseat them before they're able to log back in to resume the assessment. Resumed shows that the proctor has resat the student and they can log back in. Submitted is where the student has completed and submitted the test. And then no activity means the student has not interacted with the assessment for at least 90 seconds. This indicates the student is still in the assessment, but again, not interacting with the application. So the proctor might want to go check on the student to see if any assistance is needed with the system, or maybe they're having a little head down time. Okay. The next section is the section progress. Note that section progress will tell you what section the student is currently in. It's going to say Utah Aspire Plus once they've entered the main section of their test. Next is the item progress. Item progress is going to give you the percentage of items answered. And if you hover over the option, it's actually going to show you the progress of items. How many have been answered? How many have been visited? Because they don't actually have to respond to the item. They can skip it. Okay. The proctor does not start the test from the proctor dashboard. Students, when instructed to do so by the proctor, will start their test by starting the TestNav app on their device and entering their SSID in the test code. And so because of this, not every student's time is going to be identical. Okay, there could be some variation between that time. They're going to be fairly close, but just know that duration section could have some difference. Needs attention, Christine, is when they haven't interacted with the test for 90 seconds or more. So whether they might be sitting in confusion, or maybe they're reading a longer reading passage and haven't clicked on anything, that's what needs attention is. It's just kind of a heads up as to you might want to check and see what this student is doing or not doing, as it were. So the test duration shows how long a student, again, has been actively testing. So the student is timing the test for the students. You don't need to do that. Okay. Oh, sorry, Christine. Yes, no activity. It needs attention is going to be if possibly they were also kicked out of the system or needs to be re-entered, like they might be resumed. I apologize. My head went to a different thing. Test duration, again, shows how long they've been testing. You don't time them. The system will do it for them, okay? The number of accommodations a student has also appears in the accommodations column. If you hover over the count, it's going to show you the specific accommodation that's also been applied to the student profile, which is actually really nice too. Available actions are going to appear based on the test status of the student. So one such action here is the reseat session. which you'll use if a student has an interrupted sessions like a computer issue or they lost internet for whatever reason. The reseat is going to allow the student to re-enter their test code and SSID to resume their assessment session. Okay. The reseat session action, which is the option that I feel like it looks like a power button. It logs the student out of the test and allows them to sign in again. So reseating a student can also resolve other non-specific issues that a student might have when navigating a test. Um, so to reseat your student session, you just click that little power button. A confirmation is going to appear. Then you can select reseat. Note that when you do this, the progress is going to change from in progress or exited to like breached and then to reseat to indicate that the student can be reseated. Okay. And then the student is going to receive a notification on their device that they can log back in and begin their test session again. As a reminder, that test code will need to be communicated to the students in your proctor group. If you are testing remotely, you need to provide that through your LMS system prior to the testing session. But it is going to appear on the testing ticket if you are testing in person. Okay. Keep in mind when you share this information with your students, you only need to share the test code. You do not share the proctor password. The seal code is also going to appear under its labeled button when prompted. You can share that with your students as well when they enter that the test itself. Do we have any questions for managing and monitoring proctor groups in person? Know that remote guidance is coming, but if you are testing in person, do you have any questions on how to manage your groups or monitor your groups from the proctor side? Scroll up through the chat just to make sure. I feel like all of the questions that came through while I was talking were addressed. If you feel like that's not true, please drop it again because I want to make sure that we respond to you. Okay, I'll keep going then with some remote specific guidance. For remote proctoring, I just want to highlight some reminders here for those of you who are participating in this functionality. Remote administration is only available for students who receive all of their instruction in an online setting, 100%. Just one in-person course, even if it's like driver's ed or choir, like they only go for one elective, that does render the student ineligible for remote administration. Okay. Students requiring a paper test are also not eligible for remote administration. All proctors and students need to complete a question sampler in that remote setting to ensure readiness and familiarity with the system. Also, that makes sure that all the audio and video requirements for both the students and teachers are met because all communication has to take place within the TestNav and Atom systems during this testing session. All other applications or websites should not be accessed by proctors or students at any time. Remote proctoring still needs to be a very active process. All right. You're not up walking around the room, but you are absolutely glued to your computer screen. No other electronic devices should be in use in the room with the student. So this includes radios and televisions, okay? No parents, friends, other family members should be in the room with the student, and no more than 10 students are allowed in each of your proctor groups. Your 2 proctors monitoring each session also need to be in the same room for ease of communication. They can have separate devices. So if Scott and I are proctoring a test, we can each have our own laptop, but we are absolutely in the same room. We are not in separate offices. We are not in separate locations. Okay. It's also really nice for those 2 proctors to kind of have a game plan for who's doing what. Like, I'm going to monitor these 5 students closely. You monitor these 5 students closely. Or maybe one is monitoring the chats more closely and the other's doing video calls if any come in. Having a game plan is really good for that so that they don't become overwhelmed if an issue occurs. Because of the nature of remote testing, completing, again, that question sample remotely with the teacher as the proctor is required prior to the administration of a summative assessment. And the more of these you complete, the more confidence you are building with both your students and your staff that it will go seamlessly on testing day. Okay. Know with these students, They don't need to complete the test in its entirety if you choose not to. But getting logged in, moving between a couple of items, and allowing the teacher to use like the broadcast feature, messaging things to the group is really helpful. If you don't want them to complete the whole question sampler, you absolutely don't have to. Okay, but they do need to be logging in and at least attempting it prior. Student testing information. So anything that appears on the testing ticket needs to be provided to the student in a secure manner. So we would recommend using your school's LMS system. The testing ticket again displays the student name, their SSID, and some information about the test. The test code also is going to appear. Um, an encrypted email is appropriate to send these, but you want to ensure that your students actually know how to access information from an encrypted email because that's not just general knowledge a lot of times if you are going to go that route. Ensure your staff are also familiar with any scripting provided in the TAM, as reading them with fidelity is also still required. But know that much of the scripting is embedded within the system, but there's still a few little things that do have to be read verbatim to students. So students will need to also ensure that their speakers and their headphones are working prior to that session opening. While completing a test remotely, students will be able to communicate either through text chat or video chat with the proctors directly by using the functionality provided within the system. The system also requires that teachers monitor students directly by using their proctor dashboard features. I should note here that students will not be able to see or communicate with other students during the administration of the remote test. While teachers and students don't need to buy or install any additional software to enable the remote administration feature, they do need to have a device with working speakers, camera, microphone, and ensure that TestNav has been installed. And again, that the remote button is selected into their session when you go to pre-create those. There is a simple remote proctoring prep checklist that needs to be completed prior to any remote proctoring to ensure both teachers and student devices are working as expected. All devices, again, need to have internet access for proctors to access the admin sites and for the students to access TestNav. All devices, again, cameras, microphones, speakers, none of those are negotiable. All right. You are going to be able to check the usage of these with the app and systems check prior to login with Utah Aspire Plus, which is also nice because the system is going to tell you if any of those things are having problems before you enter the test environment. Okay. Moving forward with Utah Aspire Plus remote administration, for proctor groups participating, again, we saw this earlier, but make sure you've selected the remote proctoring checkbox to indicate that that group is testing in a remote setting. With that box checked, the system is going to then provide the communication tools. Without the box, there would be no video, no chat. Okay. You'll also need to add students the same way just by clicking the add button with the additional feature here. Once you've reached the 10 student limit, an error message rather is going to appear if you attempt to add more students. Okay. For remote sessions, proctors will still begin by navigating to Atom. The two proctors that you have for each session are going to use the very exact same test code and proctor password to monitor the same proctor group. They will need to confirm their proctor information, and once confirmed, they're going to enter their own first and last name. As a reminder, that test code, again, has to be communicated to students in your proctor groups through your LMS system prior to the session opening. Okay? Keep in mind, again, you only have to share the test code. You do not share the proctor password. As a proctor for a remote session, you can actually change your view of the proctor dashboard. The default when you first view the dashboard is this tile view, which is imperative for remote administration. And I'm going to show you why in a bit, but you can also change it to a list view by clicking the list icon. The student experience in TestNav starts by asking the student to enter their test code. This, again, communicated through your LMS or an encrypted email prior to it. And then they're going to test their audio prior to moving to the next screen. Once that's done, they're going to enter their last name and their SSID. All of this is included on the testing ticket if you elect to share those with your students. If you don't, make sure students know the information beforehand so that they can enter it. Because if they are doing remote proctoring, they aren't going to be able to communicate with their teachers through the system yet at this point. The test is then going to start to load, and the students will wait for approval from the proctor. As students start logging in, they'll appear in the dashboard as needs attention. Okay. You'll need to access the Kebab 3-dot menu, and to approve that session, you can approve or deny the students. Christine, this is also how you'll know that needs attention is when students are waiting to just be approved to log in. As students are then approved, they're going to appear on your Proctor dashboard, and you'll see the students starting to appear on the camera as they get logged into their tests. I see a tip from last year from Del Rey. Check those students with spaces or hyphens. Yes, to see how they show up in Utah Spire Plus, because it is, I'm glad you brought that up. It's incredibly specific, that typing convention. So if their names have spaces or hyphens, make sure that it appears the same way it does in the Pearson system when they are typing that in. Thank you for that. Once the proctor allows the student into the session, they are going to need to complete their system checks. The first check is going to be for their internet connection. Then the student's going to test their microphone and speakers, and then the last check is going to be their camera. Each of these requires the student to press the button on the screen to indicate that the system check can start. Okay? The student will then receive notification if the system is working or not working as they move through that systems check. Once all four systems have gotten that little blue checkbox, the student is going to select next, and this is going to let the student know they are ready to take their test. If at any point during the systems check the student's having issues, they can click the raise hand button for assistance as well that appears on their screen. You will see a hand icon appear over the student's video to let you know they need assistance. You can also see how many students have their hands raised by seeing the status bar on the dashboard. You can communicate one by one with students using the chat feature. You'll see the chat with the blue hand icon. Another notification is that the hand is raised, or the proctor of a remote testing session can also initiate a video call with a student to address any questions or concerns. To initiate the video call, the student who has their hand raised, you just click the start call button and in a new chat window for that student, and it will initiate that start call. This is that tile view I said I wanted to reference for remote testing as opposed to the list view. I want to stop for a minute and address that you might be looking at this screenshot and thinking, this looks really busy. Isn't there a way to streamline the remote proctoring appearance? Like, there's a lot going on here. And this is precisely why having no more than 10 students in a session is imperative, because you can see 4 different video feeds and 4 chats on this screen alone at one time, along with 2 minimized chats, all from different students. And while you might not have 4 students asking questions at one time, you could have 4 questions being asked at one time. This is a very real world example of what just one proctor's computer screen will look like in the remote setting. Notice there are video feeds below the 4 that are pictured. So scrolling from the top to bottom consistently, ensuring all students in your session are being monitored could be a challenge. Okay, the status bar at the top does provide some extra organization for you though, in that you can search for that one student who has their hand raised because you can't see it. While conducting testing observations actually 2 years ago, I remember a school actually mentioning they were going to start to limit their sessions to 8 students, purely because it fit better with the resolution of the proctor's computer screens, meaning that all 8 students were actually viewable at one time rather than have to scroll like a lifeguard, okay, watching a pool. While this definitely depends on the device and resolution settings of your proctor devices, as well as just proctor preference, it's just something I wanted to point out to you that remote proctoring almost requires significantly more of your attention than in-person proctoring when it comes to this computer screen. Even though there's no video broadcast option, the proctor can send a broadcast message to all students in the proctor group by using the broadcast button. It looks like a little megaphone. This is kind of like a mass text option. Okay, there's also other guidance specific to remote administration included in the TAM. So if you are participating in remote administration for Utah Spire Plus, you will definitely want to familiarize yourself with that section. But if at any time you have questions, you can reach out to Scott and I, and we are absolutely happy to help you with any specific guidance. And then what happens if a student gets sick or there's an evacuation drill? Okay, once a student has started the test, they can't go back. So the test would need to be submitted by the student or left as is. If the student has answered enough questions, no, the test is going to generate a score. I believe it's 6 items are required. I would have to double check that, but I believe it's 6 items are required for submission. No, that's for RISE. I think it's 75% of the items have to be responded to get a score. It's in the TAM, but I can also double check it if you're still questioning it. You would also use participation code like 107 for an unexpected health emergency for a sick child. Okay. For information on test irregularities, you can also check the TAM. But if there's ever any sort of irregularity or interruption, immediately contact customer service, so our Pearson Help Desk. This is absolutely not a time to set up office hours. Call the number so you can get an immediate response. Okay. Christine put in the chat, she thinks it's 80%. Thank you. 85. We can double check it. It's for sure in the TAM. I know it's in the TAM. It's just not in my brain right now. There's too many things there. Do we have any questions for remote proctoring or testing interruptions? Any nuanced testing things? Know that after this, I'm moving into post-test. So like collecting materials, participation codes, closing sessions, reporting, those types of things. So if there's any burning questions, again, test prep, actual administration things, this is a great time to bring those up. I love that we're all questioning it. It's I now that you say the 85, I feel like that's right too, but I would check the TAM. I know it's in there, um, but I apologize. The 6 items I believe is for RISE. So ignore that for Utah Aspire Plus. If a student closes their device for like a fire drill, will that give the timestamp? That is a great question, Christine. Julie, do you know if there is a fire drill or something like that, if the student immediately closes the Chromebook, what does TestNav do? Does it continue the time or does it stop the time? And Julie, if you don't want to type it in the chat, you should be able to come off mute if you want to. I don't know if hand to test it. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Christine, Julie's going to find out. That is actually great though, because if something does happen, you can tell your proctors if there is an emergency of some situation, if closing the Chromebook or the laptop helps to alleviate or stop the test, when you come back, you can continue to resume. That is nice to know. But we will find out. Any other questions before moving on to post-test stuff? Can a test session be paused and continued another session? No, Del Rey, it cannot. It is one session per sitting. Okay. Test sessions can be paused with RISE for grades 3 through 8. Grades 9 and 10, because of the nature of the test being timed and designed to mimic the ACT sitting, they are sitting it in one session. You're welcome. The other thing with if the computer is closed is nice to know is just if you lose internet connectivity, where the student, like they're not leaving the testing environment, but how does the time continue to elapse or does it stop where the student lost internet would also be part of that question from Christine that would be helpful. While Julie's checking, I'm going to go ahead and go on to post-test. This is just a simple post-test checklist. So when all students who need to test have tested, have completed, these are the things that just need to be taken care of. So all your test materials, including the testing tickets and scratch paper, need to be collected from all subjects and returned to either the test administrator for destroying, or if your teachers are securely used to destroying, they need to know how to do that. If students are testing on different subjects over multiple days, the school test administrator also needs to securely store those collected test materials until all testing is complete. Once it's done, the school test administrator can then securely destroy all testing materials if you were testing over multiple days. When it comes to finishing up, you may want to enter all student tests who are in submitted status. Okay, if you want to ensure that they're all there. If students aren't in submitted, please know that they will automatically submit by Pearson. You don't need to worry about students in a status of not started. Okay, those ones are ones you don't even have to worry about anymore. Since participation codes are part of the cleanup, I'm going to mention them again here. I reviewed one way to add those participation codes, but wanted to also review a second way to accomplish this as well. So the default accountability code for students taking Utah Aspire Plus is 200 standard participation, and this code does not need to be marked by you. Okay, it will be automatically applied after the fact. But if you need to mark a different code, you can either follow the steps I mentioned earlier, where you can apply the code through the test management and administrations menu by searching for the student and apply the code, or you can go to the operations menu and select Session Explorer and search for the student using their name or SSID. And this is going to populate all of the administrations that the student is eligible for. You can select the kebab menu under Actions to apply the participation code to your student, or apply them in bulk by using this method. So the left side of your screen is going to help you filter which tests and students need the participation code applied. And once you're in Atom, you will go to the operations menu, select Session Explorer, and then use the left side of the screen to select any or all of the specific administration students that you need to apply the participation code to by clicking the checkbox on the left. Or you can select the checkbox at the top. So for this particular group, I decided to search for any test that hadn't been started yet. I then selected the checkbox next to the students who need the participation code. So for example, let's say these students who are students who have submitted parental exclusions. So you could pick the students who were, or students who were absent, who didn't test, whichever one you need, okay? After I've selected the students, I go to the kebab menu, and at the top, I can select the bulk apply option. I can then select the appropriate code. I've selected the 204 code. And when I navigate back, you can now see that those two students I'd selected previously with that checkbox now have the 204 box in the accountability code column. This also works if you have students who have already submitted. It happens every year. You have a handful of students who submit a parent exclusion form after they have finished testing. Happens all the time. You've already also submitted, like they've taken the test. So what you'll then do is you just use the submitted option under status, okay? And you're going to find the students who submitted tests, but now need to have 214, which invalidates the test because of the parental exclusion submission. So you don't even need to invalidate the test anymore to apply the code. You just apply the code. Pearson will invalidate that test with the 214, okay? So if this happens and you need to apply it after, that is the way that you can do that. You can see here now that those two students that I previously selected now show the 214 in their accountability code column. Again, if you're only setting one or two codes, you can just click on the set code button next to the student name or selecting them one at a time. Or you can use this bulk method, which again works really well for your 214s after they submitted, or if you want to check for students who have not tested and you have to apply the absent code. Okay. Christine asks in the chat, if a student does not finish, auto submits. Yes, it will auto submit. And not started will auto submit and did not test. I believe that's what it shows up as because there's not going to show a score. And then the ones that didn't finish, in reporting, I'm almost positive I hit on this in reporting, but there's also like an identifier that shows up on the ISR when they don't hit that 85% threshold, so that you know that they took the test and they started it, but they didn't answer enough of the items. If I didn't do that in reporting, I will email you, but I feel like I have a slide for that. Do we have any questions for participation codes through that Session Explorer? For what it's worth, we are moving into reporting. We put in the did not test last year, but if the auto submit, that's great. Yeah, it will submit if the student started it, for sure. They just might not have answered enough questions to generate a score.
Hi, Elise.
Yes.
Good morning. So if a student didn't start and it auto submits, I don't think it automatically will enter that 101 did not test participation code.
No, it's definitely not going to auto do
And
that.
I think that's what Christine is asking.
Oh, okay. Um, But the
You have to
one-on-one
enter
is
a
only if they're absent.
or did not test for any reasons not outlined in the other participation codes. They
Yeah,
weren't there. So yeah, that you have to fill in that.
perfect. Thank you. Any other cleanup style questions? If they come to your brain, you're absolutely welcome to still drop them in the chat. When it comes to reporting, this screen should look kind of familiar because I showed you the very same piece when we were walking through the Utah Spire Plus Resource Center, but I want to hit on it now since we're moving into that reporting space. This is where you'll find all the provided guidance for accessing your reports in Utah Aspire Plus. So first, there's this progress option after you log in. This isn't very exciting right now because there are no tests started. But during your testing, the numbers within the session status and the score status sections are going to change as students complete their tests. It's just a really easy way at a glance for you to monitor test completion in your LEA, as well as for me to monitor it statewide. Similarly, the activity report isn't much to look at right now, but graphs and numbers will start to populate in real time as your school completes their testing. It's going to show you how many tests have been submitted, how many are actively testing, and then it's also going to be listed below by session. I'm going to skip to report assets for a bit. Skip over report assets for a bit and just go over to performance because performance reports are also provided to show individual student performance for individual content areas. To view those, you click on a row to view the specific content area. Okay. Then you can toggle between different screens. You can view the program report as well as the performance comparison. The program report is going to show how students performed as a whole. Okay, you can use filters here if necessary, as well as export the data as a spreadsheet. The performance comparison provides information to evaluate student performance across schools. It also includes the percent and count of students in each proficiency level, if that's helpful for you. And then by selecting the show score groups as a table checkbox, you can actually get even more information on the number and percent of students who fall within each of these score ranges. You can also drill down within your district or school to view individual performance. The kebab menu just expands to select student performance. If you want to see reports at the class level, you can select the class from that class drop down. To access the standard performance report for any content area, you start the same way on the performance dropdown of the reporting menu and then select the test where you want to view standard performance. And you'll just need to toggle from the performance summary tab to the standard performance summary tab that I've outlined there in red. And you can see all standards administered and the performance percentage. This represents the percentage of students who tested proficient on that standard. You can also change the views by toggling the other visible tabs here. So aligned standards only or the hierarchy, anything like that. Now, in the event that you need to access archived test events or test scores or ISRs from previous years, you are going to navigate to reporting and then report assets, that one that we skipped over at the beginning. And then you just select the year that you want to view. Here, you can pick the year you wish to view, the report types. So if you want to do the test event, the test score, or the ISR, and then just download it as desired. You can download multiple reports at the same time by checking the box. And you really don't have to do it by year and just have the full list. Or you can just use the drop down for the ISRs, for example. So as a note, you can download up to 20 files that get put into a zip file for you. ISRs will appear as they have in the past. There it is. Yes, students didn't complete 85% will show as do not report. I knew I put it on there. Makes me happy. More guidance is also included in the score interpretation guide. Remember, there are two of these. There's one for teachers and one for parents. That do not report is again because students didn't complete the required number of items to receive a score. It has nothing to do with the parental exclusion, which is a common misconception in the past. Okay, students with parental exclusion codes on all content areas aren't even going to generate an ISR if they had the parental exclusion for all content areas. If they took one of the tests but had a parental exclusion for the others, it will then have the did not test. It's going to be blank. Okay. Do we have questions on post-test activities, participation codes, reporting, any of these things? I see the chat, but I also see that questions have been addressed, the ones that are new to me. Amanda says the export report when looking at performance by standard spring 2025 didn't seem to be working. At least nothing appears in my download. Do the reports get downloaded into a separate location? Um, no, Amanda, there's not a separate location for this one like there is with Rise where we have this secure file center. It should be downloading to your device. Um, I would say with that, go to try it again, and if it doesn't work for you, contact the Pearson Help Desk to see what might be going on with that. Can parents access ISRs online? Christine, they can through the parent portal. The parent portal, though, is not available until after ISRs have been provided to schools. Um, I cannot remember the parent portal day off the top of my head. I want to say ISRs become available to you as school users on like May 26th or 25th, maybe. But generally, Parent Portal hasn't become available until the first week of June, if I remember right. Julie may know better than me as far as Parent Portal availability. But they would have to have the student's SSID, correct spelling of their name to then access the ISR through the Parent Portal. Thanks, Julie. This slide is just your one-stop shop for contacts with both Pearson and USBE. If you have any questions regarding test administration, feel free to reach out to me. Jessica does our accommodations, Maureen is for rostering, Scott does testing ethics, as well as the practices for remote proctoring. So if you have anything that you are just too afraid to ask right now, or at the same time, if it doesn't come into you until later, here are our email addresses as well as the Pearson Help phone number line. Know that this training has been recorded. So here in the near future, you'll be able to reference it at any time on our YouTube page. I'm also going to work with Emily to get these slides posted as a link for you in Midas. So if you registered to participate and you're here right now, you will have access to these in the form of a PDF. But I would still encourage you to obviously familiarize yourself with the TAM as well as the other reporting documentation that's provided on the resource site. I am still happy. We still have about 10 minutes left of our allowable time. So I'm happy to stay on and answer any questions. But if you are confident, not much has changed as far as Utah Aspire Plus. If you are comfortable and confident with what has been provided and your own skills from previously, you are welcome to drop off the call and get back to your day. But I'm happy to still respond to questions. Jessica will be back in the office. I believe her conference is today and tomorrow, so she should be back Monday. But Delray, you're always welcome to send her an email. She generally still responds to emails even when she's at a work conference at some point. It just won't be as quickly as she responds when she's working in the office. Do you have a login sheet for us to get certificates or credit? Emery, those will be provided through Midas. Emily goes through our support specialist, goes through to see who attended, and she awards credit through Midas, and you will get an email with that. Did we get a response to the time stopping if the fire drill occurs? Not yet, Bruce, that I've seen anyway. Go for it, Dr. Blake. Clarifying question about remote or in-person testing. Happy to address it. We didn't register in Midas. What is the course code? Oh, it's in the AD memo. If you don't know your assessment director, they should be able to help you with that. Julie's responded in the chat, if they close their device, it will log them off and give a timestamp. A lot of time, though, they leave the test running and we do manual resets. Ah, Amy dropped it in there for you. Perfect. Thank you so much, Amy. The Midas course number was 66057, and it's section 2. Scott also dropped in the chat that last year the parent portal was open June 4th, which also means this year it's going to be, I can't remember if it's one day above or one day below, but it's going to be either June 3rd or June 5th is when that's going to most likely open for this year. So in the same manner, or could students do, for instance, ELA online and the rest in person? Dr. Blake, absolutely. The student can test remotely or in person as long as their instruction is still remote. If they want to elect to test in person with you for one or two or all three of those, they absolutely can, um, if that is what is chosen. Julie says the schedule shows June 2nd for that parent portal.
That's a Tuesday.
You're welcome, Christine. We are happy to help. Any other questions from any current participants still on the Zoom? Again, if you don't have questions, you're free to drop off. You're welcome, friends. Thank you for your attendance and participation. We couldn't do it without all of your support with our LEAs as well. I'm not seeing other questions, so I'm going to go ahead and say thank you to our Pearson friends. Oh, Derek, I have friends here. Yes, it's always fun to see all my old teacher buddies. Thanks for saying hi. I love it when my teacher friends get to see what I do now. It makes me happy. Thank you, Pearson friends, also for your support in the chat. I appreciate you, and USBE as well. Love it. Can't do it without you. You're amazing. Emily, feel free to go ahead and stop the recording, and I will get you these slides, and we can go ahead and continue throughout our day.